felt it would give us the best access to the strongest possible group of senior insurance decision makers.
InsurTech Insights is a must-do conference, I think, for the network that is built here.
All right. Thanks everybody for joining us, and thank you all panelists for joining us today. We're going to start off with doing a quick round of introductions, and I'll start with myself. Christy Cunningham, nice to be here with you all today. I'm with Kyndryl. I'm the U.S. CTO there, and I have a group of architects that we help set the strategy for the U.S. and work with all of our wonderful customers as part of Kyndryl services, professional services, and consulting with many of our top clients, customers across the country. Let's do a quick round of introductions.
Good afternoon. Atif Malik. I run the global IT infrastructure for Aegon, which is based out of Netherlands, and my focus is on the infrastructure side.
Hey everyone, good afternoon. My name is Matt Keene. I work at Aflac. I head up our data, AI, and enterprise transformation office. Happy to be here today. Looking forward to the discussion.
My name is Tony Skipper. I work at the Allianz. I run the technology for the U.S. Excited to be here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you all. We'd love to have questions from the audience as well. So there's going to be a QR code, I believe, put up behind me. So feel free, and I have a wonderful little pad here. I'll feed your questions in as well. So we'd love to have this interactive, ask your questions away. The panelists are going to share some of their experiences around data and moving on their AI journey, what their struggles are, challenges are, and most importantly, what some of the business value is that they have been realizing. So let's get started a little bit. So AI is not top of mind for anybody, right? Generative AI, agentic AI is on everybody's mind. You've seen that throughout the sessions here today. So what have you all been doing to get started on your journey? And let's start off with Tony.
I mean, I think the first thing is actually to start on the journey. To get started, try something. Don't be afraid to fail, but make sure you start. I think you also need a governance framework early, because you do need to know why you're doing AI, how you're doing it, and you also need, and I'm sure Matt will talk about, you need to understand the data all your AI is based on, because someone's going to ask you to validate it, a regulator, God forbid, an attorney. And then I think you want to have separate tracks. I think you need to think about personal productivity. AI can help everybody in your organization. You can probably do that with commercial products. A second track on the infrastructure space. You could automate a lot of those tasks for your engineers, resetting a firewall, router, doing those tasks where you can take them and have them do more business value. I think the third category is always to be around development. Can you improve the old code? Can you write the new code? But I truly think the best part is when you move into the business application space. You get that partnership, the collaboration with your business partners, and you make the underwriting process better, the sales process better, the claims process better. That's where the true value comes in. But you want to use all those approaches.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody want to add anything on that, or?
Yeah, I'll jump in real quick, Tony. So I would, I agree. Governance is. I think if I think about our journey at Aflac and where we decided to invest first, it really was in that governance aspect. I think it's easy to want to go solve problems quickly with AI. I think the challenge is, especially when you're a highly regulated industry, is how do you go at the pace in which your enterprise can withstand, right? And so we decided to focus first on governance and really thinking through how are the states going to regulate this, and how can we be prepared for that? You know, in insurance, we handle a lot of customer data. It's very sensitive data, so we have to be very pragmatic in our approach. We want to go solve all the problems, right? But the reality is you've got to sort of pace that with how quickly can you establish governance and security processes.
Perfect. Atif, you shared that you're the head of infrastructure. So to make all of this happen, we at Kyndryl and our studies show, you need great infrastructure to do that. And you're head of infrastructure. So what have you been doing in that space to enable all of these use cases, and what challenges are you facing in that space?
Sure. So from an infrastructure perspective, right, I have a front row seat into what our businesses are asking us to do. but the complexity of our legacy systems that we have to deal with. We have 40 plus years of mainframe and the data that's siloed, claims, regulatory, risk, all of those capabilities are there, but they are in a siloed form. So from an infrastructure perspective, we had to rethink how do we enable the data that needs to take advantage of modern tools like agentic or Gen AI. And to do that, they will not work unless we have a single source, a single truth, a single platform that actually is able to take that data, apply intelligence to it, and come back with a response. To do that, we looked at it from the perspective of, all right, infrastructure, we have been doing things related to cost takeouts, related to things that make sense, like dedupes or reduce our footprint where it makes sense. But on top of it, with legacy systems, they're not meant to be run in a AI mode or AI fashion. They're not real time. So we changed our thought process and said, we need to invest in network. We need to invest in compute. We need to invest in new capabilities, GPU, CPUs, that can take advantage. But at the same time, we were challenged with the business that you're not moving fast enough. We're not going there because you're not giving us a business case that makes sense to us. So while my counterparts panelists here are talking about real world experience, again, when I say the front row, I'm actually looking at it from the service management perspective, how I can reduce the operational or increase our operational efficiencies. And that requires working with other teams, data teams, architecture teams, security teams, to help us enable what we need to do to take tools like Gen AI or agentic AI and deliver them to our business.
Awesome. Let's talk a little bit, you mentioned the data governance piece of it, but what are you, Matt, what are you hearing and seeing, whether it's from your other executives, the board in this space, and how are you getting them comfortable, or have you moved past that and sharing with the group of how you got them comfortable managing the risk and moving forward on this journey and what value it could actually offer? Is there any particular storyline from a board standpoint, or even education that was needed?
Yeah, I do think that our board was very interested in our position, right? I think most boards are probably interested in your position on AI and how you're going to harness it to really drive business value. But I think the foundation of that is really getting that level of comfort in terms of how are we going to manage the risk. We're a risk-based industry. How do we manage the risk first? And that was a considerable amount of time. There's been an ongoing thread with the board for a long time on risk mitigation in terms of AI. And I think we've reached now this inflection point with executives on the board where we need to switch now. We feel really comfortable with how we plan to manage the risk, and now we need to start to move closer to business value. So now the perspective that we're sharing with the board is, let's now step into that business value too. Let's not try to bite off too much all at once. Let's ready the workforce, then let's ready our systems, then let's ready the business processes to be able to accept that. The panelists here, we've talked a little bit about AI data readiness. That's a huge aspect of it, data quality. Those are all technology aspects that we can't forget about either. Managing risk is one thing. We now have to manage the estate that's going to drive all these things. And we have a pragmatic approach to doing that where we want to expose the workforce first. So how do you ready your teams to accept AI? It really needs to be part of their business process. It can't feel like it's something separate from the business process. That's going to take time. We really have to sit with teams that are really ripe to adopt this, that are doing highly transactional work today, and then how can we move that to a state where they're able to leverage it to accelerate their own work. And then we just continue to capitalize on that, keep that momentum going, and then build on that new layers of complexity. Because the real value is not in that deployment to the workforce, right? The real value is in how are you actually implementing AI to transform your back-end business processes, automations, things like automating your admin platforms, et cetera, et cetera. Those are the things where you're really going to start to drive value for the organization, but they also come with a really high order of magnitude of risk and complexity, and you don't want to try to do that out of the gate.
Yeah. Kind of a follow-on to that for you or any of the panelists here for that. One of the things that I've seen is many organizations start to create like a steering committee, because to your point, what is the business value stream that we're going to change, the business process that we're going to change? And I've seen organizations get very excited and they come up with a list of like 200 different ideas that they want to do. So how have you created steering committees or other ways that you have to help prioritize, so you put the funding to the highest value, and how do you go about doing that? Anyone?
Go ahead.
Oh, please.
I can go first.
Okay.
We did very similar to steering committee, where we built a chassis on AWS Launchpad. The reality is chassis is not able to get us the real value that the business is asking for. Business is saying that, how can you reduce my claims process or underwriting? And we are showing capabilities. They're still in pilot. Now, in our pilot, when we have done this, where we're looking at about 20 to 30% reduction in our underwriting process, human intervention, people who actually need to go through the policies based on the scenarios, we're able to do that through agentic AI. It's not rolled out into production, but to what you're asking for, everyone has ideas. So we built that chassis, made that realistic. Now, I had my service management team coming in and saying, incidents, I want to see how many incidents that we are repeat and what can we do to fix it. The data was able to show us that. But the true business value that we're looking at right now really enabled showing the chassis, putting some business case in there to show that 20 to 30% reduction in the underwriting process. Now, there are other cases where risk modeling is coming in and asking us what those capabilities you can provide. I don't know what the answer is to that, because those use cases need to be vetted out in real life, in real world. But those are some of those pilots that we are engaging with our business partners. I don't think our AI strategy should be technology. We actually are getting pressured from the business. You're not moving fast enough. What are you doing to move fast enough? Every week there's a new story comes out about agentic AI or Palantir or someone else coming in and fundamentally changing the business model. We have to keep up with that. To do that, we looked at it from building that chassis, aligning with our business partners to deliver on some of these business cases.
So I do think, and I'll play off Matt's term, I think you've got to upskill the staff to make sure you're making the right decisions. You've got to educate the business. You also got to educate the IT staff. Probably every dollar you spend there gets returned 2- and 3-fold. When we talk about steering committees, I get a little nervous because they sort of become a monolithic stop everything. I think if you train the staff, you put a governance process in place, maybe you say a standard. If you can get a 10% ROI or 15% ROI, you want to get people to be creative, but you have to govern it. We have a term at Allianz, sort of copy with pride. I think the key is once you see something successful, tell everybody about it. If an actuary invented it and an underwriter wants to use it, that's the greatest thing ever. Give the actuary credit, but don't go rebuild that. So I think of governance and training going together, and then think of that as you're advertising what you did, and then build on top of that. If you put too much bureaucracy around it, you're going to slow down your creativity. But on the governance side, as Matt talked about, in the US you got 50 regulators or 51. We've got all the regulators around the world. If you don't have that detail about why you're doing it, you end up in a bigger issue. So train the staff, but then encourage them to be as creative and copy as much as possible.
On that a little bit, do you think there's in addition to training the staff, is there a bit of, how the organization, a way of working, how the organization works, and is it creating, do you think, the need to create more of an innovative culture so you can get those ideas out, but, manage them? Anything in that space?
I'll start. I mean, I think that, to create innovative culture is very hard, but I think if you give people freedom, it comes a little bit naturally. I don't think you can put on their calendar, Friday at 2 o'clock, do your innovation. I just don't think that works. But again, give them the value, give them the training, put the guardrails, let them understand risk management, let them understand governance, let them understand the infrastructure, let them understand the cost. And then I think you start pulling people together and create those cross teams. As you mentioned, if you've got a team of just IT people sitting in one room and you got CFOs in the other room, why can't you bring them together? Give them coffee, give them pizza, give them pretzels, let them talk about it, and you'll create an innovation.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, Tony, but right after this, I have innovation planned on my calendar. So
Perfect,
yeah.
perfect. That's what I said. It's a great idea. You should do that.
No, I completely agree. I think it's I think once you enable people with the technology, they just naturally get creative. I always used to say this about developers, right? Like engineers, engineers are just wired to always find a shortcut to do something, right? And that's like the innovation as part of their job. It's just part of how they think, part of how they write code. Just naturally always looking for how they can be more efficient. And I think as we as humans are exposed to things that enable us to do that, and this is all public domain now, right? ChatGPT, OpenAI, whatever you're using, we're all using it on a daily basis, and we're finding new ways to use it that are making us far more efficient than we were yesterday, right? So I agree that like you what'd you say, copy
with pride.
Copy with pride. I love that. Yeah.
I'm going to remind everybody, I haven't seen any questions, so there is a QR code. If you all have some questions that you want to ask of our panelists, please let me know. I want to take the other side of the innovation. So we stopped innovating now.
All right, so let me stop my watch.
Yep. Out of time for innovation. Sorry, just kidding. The other side of that, and kind of playing off of the data governance piece, responsible AI. So just because you have the data, you have access to the data, should you be using it for certain intent? So how are you all handling that? Matt, you want to tee us off on that? Or?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I mean, it's part of the last year we've spent in governance and really considering the risk management approach to AI has been a lot of that. Like, how do you know when to use data? Are you using it for the way that you're supposed to? I mean, regulators are really going to come down on us about this, right? So you really have to think through that piece of it. I don't know that anyone's really got it nailed yet. I think we've all got a really good plan for risk mitigation. But I think it's going to be one of those things where as we step into new layers of complexity with this technology, always being mindful of, are we doing it in a responsible way? Do we have good prompt management? Do we have good observability on our data? Do we know when a prompt is being generated, where the data is coming from, what the response is, why it has that risk? Like, those are all things that we have to pay attention to. And it layers more complexity onto the solution, but we can't lose sight of it.
Any other adds to that?
I'm still stuck in innovation.
You're still
I'm stuck in innovation.
Your calendar timer didn't go off?
This is the first time. Remember, I'm the back of the bus. Infrastructure is always in the back of the bus. You got to do this, plumbing and whatever. But this is the moment I think there's more excitement from the business where I don't have to tell the business, you need to do this. There's real savings around efficiency, and where my philosophy, I was telling this earlier, is that folks who are in AI are the next enablers. Who don't embrace AI, they're going to be left behind. And business is the one that is driving, not from the front office customer experience. They're also looking at the back office ops. And we are on the same seat with them, enabling that culture of AI, generative AI, agentic AI. So I'm still stuck in innovation.
Okay.
Governance, I get that.
I'd take the other side of responsible data. I think people worry we're going to use data to deny a claim or deny an underwriting.
Yeah.
I think as insurance companies, we also have a responsibility to use that data to make sure you don't have a claim. If you think you're in the property casualty space, I mean, we know we've warned people for years, don't be on a ladder. If you're on a ladder, you're going to fall. If we've got data that shows it's a medical data, you shouldn't be taking this drug, or we've got data that shows you shouldn't be driving this car, we owe it to our policyholders to let them know that. So I think we just need to make sure people understand insurance companies are here to help you. We're in the protection business, so part of that is using data to give people advice. Sometimes they don't take it. I think we all probably know you probably don't want to, have 15 Diet Cokes a day, which I do, so I'm sure it's bad for me. But, you give people advice, you let them make a decision, and I think I think the industry does a good job protecting the data. I think we've done that for many, many years. I think AI is going to help us make better decisions as long as we know where the data came from.
Yeah.
And to your point.
It's a great point.
It's a great point. Got a couple questions from the audience here. So maybe on the little bit, maybe to Atif on some of the infrastructure side. So if you're using a central source of data, and there's data that you want to protect and make sure AI isn't accessing that data, how do you protect it? Any techniques around that?
So from an infrastructure, data has always been a key to making informed decisions, like Tony said. Trust AI is the next big thing for us. Now, to do the trust, you have to have security controls built into it. You also have risk appetite built into it. And you also have to know where the data is coming from. So there's a methodology that I follow is CARD, how the data is created, how the data is retained, how the data is accessed, and how the data is deleted. If you follow those, you can activate each one of the value chain related to that question where how do you enable that data? How do you trust that data? Where is the data coming from? Because let's face it, nowadays, if you Google anything, you can get what you want based on what you think it should be. So we have to rely on the trust AI as a core component, and you have to work with. A little while ago, we talked about silos. We built a squad where we enabled risk, we enabled security, we enabled controls, we enabled architecture to come in and work where their appetite is, what data needs to be in our chassis, and what data needs to be not in our chassis. So that's how we looked at it, and that's how we tackled the trust issue with our data.
Perfect, thank you. Back on a governance question, Matt, you and I were talking about this earlier, and love for you to share what you're doing now or where you started and where you're headed, if that's okay, around how do you manage AI governance on top of data governance? I'm even thinking about the policy structures and all of that.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's highly dependent on the level of scrutiny that you have in your AI governance process. For us, specifically at Aflac, we had such a surgical focus on how we were going to manage AI risk that we actually stood up a separate AI governance process. Now, arguably, it wasn't much different than our data governance process, but for the purpose of making sure that we were specifically addressing the AI risk management aspect, it was important to the business and our board and executives that we had something very specific and unique for AI. So we developed an AI governance policy. We created AI training for every employee, similar to your ethics training that you would take every year, so that all of our employees are ready for what AI means. We have a separate AI governance intake process for new AI ideas. Now, all this is still data, right? So I think the idea is that while we're being very unique and surgical with it now, I envision a world where in a few years, those paths come back together again, right? I don't think that there's going to be a long-term need to have separate governance processes, but I do see instances where there's a short-term need for it. And you could see there's probably examples of that throughout every new technology that's come about in previous years. And so this one's really no different, but it's going to be probably specific to your business and what's really driving your data governance. I would imagine there's a lot of places that would integrate it in with their data governance policies today. Aflac we chose a different path with that, and it worked for us.
Great. Atif, there's a specific question for you, and we talked a lot, or Tony, you shared some use cases in the productivity space. It's a good way to get started. On the other side, within the infrastructure space, are you using AI for your infrastructure management services?
We are. Definitely we are. I'll answer it in two ways. One is everybody comes to us for information, data. And if there's an incident with CMDB or CIs, that which application is down, what's the impact, who's involved, all these things I needed to do from a service management perspective, more monitoring. So we integrated with our Elk stack with Big Panda to get that data. The other thing that we did on top of it is we went crazy with the data that we have now, rather than calling each one which application this or that. We're like, give me the top 10 applications, give me who's the biggest culprit, give me to the point where when our biggest incident happened, Monday morning is the answer, by the way. All of those things, we didn't know that we had visibility into it, but the data that we had integrated gave us those insights. And we were more proactive in doing this. Now, we are also deploying Copilot. We did that. So just like everything else, we're new to AI, relatively new. Every time we hear something new comes in, we're like, how does it impact us? We're the guinea pig before it rolls out to the production. So we did that with Copilot, revolved the licenses, we enabled our businesses to see it, but a lot of these things that we're doing now are going to change in the next 6 months or a year. Right now, everyone is talking, every panel I go to, agentic AI, agentic AI. 6 months ago, it wasn't the case. It was Gen AI. Now, we were AI, like mainframe onwards is all AI, but Gen AI gave us that layer. Agentic AI, autonomous without human intervention is another layer. Again, I think that things will change. How much it will change, we don't know, but we are excited because we're working with the business to show the real value of AI.
Great. As one final question, I think for each of our panelists here today, kind of to your point, things continue to change. There's going to be something else next. So what would be your advice, and we'll start down there with you, Tony, first. What would be your advice for anybody as they're getting started or on their journey, but thinking about, something else is going to be here in 6 months? So what advice do you have?
I mean, I think for those enterprise decisions, your main applications, you've got to make a decision and live with it for like 36 months. You can't be switching tools every 6-9 months, again, at the enterprise level. If you're talking about personal productivity, you're talking about some things you're experimenting with, that's probably disposable IT. If you don't like Copilot, stop using it, turn the license off. What have you lost? But at the enterprise level, you have to have a business case to give you, again, at least 36 months. I just don't think the ROI is there without it.
Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with that, and I would say I'd want to have both, right? I would want to have that enterprise focus on how does this transform the business in the future, and stay away from the what, like what technology we're going to use, any of that stuff. It's like, what's the business value that's being promised by this technology? And then I would also have your commodity type capabilities, which is how can we help to increase productivity? Those aren't the big bang things, but you're going to need them in the toolkit. It's a good entrance into this technology. But so I would have both of those things, and then obviously underlying that is how will we be able to support this in the long run? And that's probably a great segue over here, my buddy Atif.
I would say fragmented data will not help us solve the future. We need to have a centralized data that will give us the benefits that all these new tools that are coming in. Maybe agentic AI is, and then there's 2.0 version. But all of these tools rely on data that's centralized. And unless you have that strategy down packed, you're not going to be able to take advantage of anything else that's out there.
Awesome, thank you. I think you all have hit on some key points today, and Kyndryl recently partnered on a study that showed a lot of what you all have reinforced today, which is getting your foundations right, whether it's the infrastructure, your data, creating an innovative culture, thinking about the ways of working. All of the things that you all reinforced, we also identified through our study, talking to many of our customers as well. So thank you all for participating and sharing your experience and your knowledge. Hopefully it was helpful for everybody today and you got something out of this. I would also welcome you all to stop by the Kyndryl booth. I've asked the panelists if you have questions for them, just want to talk to them about further on their experiences today or what they're doing, where they're headed. Please stop by. They're going to hang around for a little bit of time. And I thank you all for participating. And again, thanks to the panelists. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.